What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of SNT Talk Football, the second ever Premier League Matchday preview, Matchday 11 this time. Today, we're going to be previewing the three best matches from this week because last week we realized that previewing all the matches makes the video a bit lengthy. We're also going to be discussing the relegation battle, which teams are going to get relegated. And in the end, we're going to be discussing which teams which players the Big Six need to sign this transfer window, the January transfer window. Some people who they want to bolster their squad. So yeah, let's get right into today's episode, predicting the first game we have down, which is the Liverpool Wolves game. What do you think is going to happen here?
Uh, as we know, Raul Jimenez suffered a fracture to his skull, and he's really important. From the moment Wolves qualified to the Premier League in 18-19, I think he's been definitely one of their most important players through the years. I think he's a really good striker. He has a brilliant eye for goal. Obviously, he'll be missing the Liverpool clash, but I don't know. Liverpool definitely have confidence after confirming that first place of their Champions League group. But I think I don't know. I don't know if Trent's gonna be back, but I feel Neco Williams, since he played against Ajax against David Neres, who did give him a bit of a hard time. He did really well though, and I was very impressed by the way Neco Williams performed. But I think he'll be tired after that match, and playing against fresh players like Podence and Neto, who are so fast and have had a week's worth of rest. I think that will be a struggle. I think we have to do our best to shut off Neto, because I saw him against Arsenal and I was impressed by him. I thought he was really good. So I think we have to definitely block Neto. I think from the attacking point of view, Neto, and definitely Traore also, because he's really fast and he's an extremely good dribbler and he could cause trouble. But again, I think Liverpool are just better. I think Trent's coming back and that'll be a boost. So even Naby Keita, maybe Wijnaldum can get a bit of a break. I'm gonna say 2-0 Liverpool. 2-0 Liverpool. I'm gonna say Mane and Henderson.
So I would agree with you there. The Wolves are really missing who's actually been, in my opinion, their best player since getting promotion to the Premier League, Raul Jimenez, their clinical Mexican number 9. He's been so good for them, really, and it's so sad to see a player get injured like that. And it seems like he won't be back for quite a while. And but Wolves do have some good attacking threats. They've signed Podence from Olympiacos halfway through last season, and he's been a really, really good addition to their squad, proving just how good he is this season in particular. Neto has been on really good form lately, and Adama Traore, one of the fastest, if not the fastest player in the league, also got a pretty good end product since last season, scoring more goals, giving more assists than he ever has. He might be starting at striker actually this week. They've also signed Porto youngster Fabio Silva, a really good player, not proven just yet, but could always be a threat. But Liverpool put up a good performance in midweek with the academy players Kelleher, Curtis Jones, Neco Williams being the standouts. All of them had great performances. Neco, especially, something I noticed because he's not been really good for Liverpool recently, and in that game he's really stepped up against a big opposition in a big game. Jurgen Klopp said this match was comparable to some of the biggest Anfield nights in the Champions League, even though it must not have really felt like it for the Liverpool fans. I think some really big performances in there, some good performers. Salah and Mane were definitely not at their best in that game. Neither was Diogo Jota on the fine goal scoring form we've seen him in. Um, but I think they'll bounce back this weekend. I think Liverpool will grab a 2-1 win. Actually, you know what? I'm going for a 1-0 win. I don't think Jota will score against Wolves. I think Wolves know the player too well for him to grab a goal there. I think I'm going to go for a Wijnaldum goal. Let's go for a Wijnaldum goal. Wijnaldum, who also needs to sign a contract. His contract runs out halfway through this year, and he's available to go on a free after the 31st of December, which is only 28 days away. He's allowed to sign with any other European club. or any club in the world really, and that's a bit concerning for Liverpool fans because he's been a very very vital player in their team, and he's been so good for them. He's started 6 games in the last 13 days, and he's put in great performances in all of them. I think if they lose him, they'll be losing on a very very good player. So I think there's that. And yeah, moving on, let's get into our next game for the match week. It is a North London derby, ladies and gentlemen. It is Arsenal versus Tottenham Hotspur, a team that has been on fine form versus a team which, has not been at their best. But when the derby comes by, all form flies out of the window. It's usually a match of passion. And what do you think will happen in this game?
Uh, I think I heard some news that Harry Kane was injured, so Mourinho said he might be available for the North London derby, and I think he's been their best player so far this season. I think he's their most important player, and he has been for whatever time he's been at the club. I think he's definitely been their most important player. If he plays, I don't know. I still think if he does or doesn't play, I still think Tottenham will win because they've been in such good form recently, and I don't know. I've not been impressed by Arsenal at all. I don't know. The Arteta has definitely improved them, but I think they're a Europa League side. I just do not think they're there to actually put pressure on the top four, on the top three. So I think I think with Kane, Spurs will win 3-1, and without Kane, Spurs will win 2-1, because I think everybody's gonna be saying, Spurs are definitely gonna win, Spurs are gonna do this. But then this always happens in football. You say something and then the other thing happens. So, but I still think Spurs will win because they're just a better team. They're playing better. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think while both teams historically are pretty good recently, Spurs further back, Arsenal have dropped off more recently. I think both have great players on their day, players like Aubameyang, Kane. Aubameyang, who's been on bad form since signing his new contract. Kane, who's in the form of his life right now. He's exploded under Jose, like Jose promised. If any of you watched the Spurs documentary, Son, another really good player, probably one of the best wingers in the league, showing up this season. He and Kane have formed a formidable duo. You know, like they're second in the all-time assists and goals to each other list, though that duo list. And I think both of them will be the biggest threats to that Arsenal defense. Gabriel Magalhaes is a player who Arsenal signed this season. One of the best defenders in the league so far. He's been really good for them, making some vital defensive contributions. Definitely help bolster their defense a lot. Their defense a lot. It's definitely better than it was last season. I think in attack I think they're lacking a bit of creativity, which we'll get into who they could sign to fix that in the transfer window later on in the video. But I think the thing they're lacking right now is creativity, and some players. I think dropping Ozil from their Premier League squad is a big something they did, which it's going to cost them because Ozil was the spark, the creativity in their team, and now that he's not in the squad, that finding those key passes is going to be a bit of a problem. But I think that it could be a 2-0 win for Tottenham. I'm going to say two two goals for Son. I think they've also got a new, I mean, not a new defender, but a player who's converted to a centre back under Mourinho. It's Eric Dyer, and as of recently, he's been very good for Tottenham Hotspur. I think one of the best defenders this season. Definitely not up there right now, but definitely improved a lot. Him and Alderweireld formed a good partnership. He's covering for the recently sold Jan Vertonghen well. And yeah, I think Spurs will get 2-0 wins on with both the goals.
I just want to say, I think part of the reason why I like seeing Spurs play, like I like the way they play football more, is because I'm not the biggest fan of the 3-4-3 formation. I do not like it. Whereas 4-2-3-1, which Spurs play, is my favorite formation. And talking about Arsenal and why they haven't been too good. Obviously, Arteta, he knows what he's doing. But I don't. For some of the players, like for example, Kieran Tierney, I think this 3-4-3 formation has suited him perfectly. He's a good person to play as a left centre back. But I think for other players like Aubameyang and Danny Ceballos, this formation actually hasn't worked out too well for them. It's sort of, it complements some players while it doesn't complement others. The Spurs formation, on the other hand, I feel it's a formation that suits all the players. It brings out the best in every single player on the pitch, where I feel the 3-4-3 for Arsenal doesn't. But anyways, our next match is West Ham versus United. What do you think about this one?
I think this clash of the Uniteds is going to be a big game. West Ham, who've been on really fine form lately, they've found a new formation, a 5-4-1 formation, just that one striker. They signed Jared Bowen from Hull halfway through last season. They're a good team, and I think the wing backs they have at the moment, Masuaku, Kufal, are putting in some really dangerous crosses. I saw them play that game against Liverpool where Jota grabbed the winner. I think they were very good in that game, especially defensively. Very solid team. They beat Villa last weekend, actually on Monday, but I think they've on a really good run of form right now. And if I'm not mistaken, United just lost to PSG. I know I'm not mistaken. It was a 3-1 loss. Neymar, 2 goals and 1 goal from Marquinhos, who's recently converted to a central midfielder. I think United chances of doing better is that the game is away from home, because at home United have been absolutely atrocious this season, only winning like what, 1 game or 2 games in their whole all the home games they played this season. And that's a really shocking record for a club as big as Man United, and especially in they've got good players but they're not performing. And on their day they could be good, I guess, but their day is seeming to be very rare, and they're a bit of a momentum team, and they when they lose momentum they seem to really crash. So I think it's going to be actually a 1-0 West Ham win. I think it's going to be a Paulo Fanal's goal. He's a threat this season. He's much better, improved a lot since he last season he wasn't the best. He's improved a lot this season. I think he'll be the one to grab the vital goal in a 1-0 win over Ole's tricky Reds. What are your thoughts on this game?
Uh, I I don't know. Yeah, you're right. United have been yeah, they have been extremely inconsistent. They hammered Leipzig 5-0, and then they just lose in the Premier League to an average side. But this always happens. They're always like these informed sides like West Ham and Southampton, who, no offense, aren't exactly like a consistent team. They're not on form for the entire season, if you could say that. But people always say, West Ham are doing so well, Southampton are doing so well, but then they face one of the big six teams who are not in great form and they don't seem to win. So I don't know. I think United, after losing in the Champions League, will definitely want to win. I think definitely that the technical ability in their squad is definitely better than West Ham's. But I think West Ham have been much better than them this season. It's clear to see they Kufal has been really good. The entire team has played well. They look really organized. They were quite good against Liverpool. They kept getting crosses into the box. Oh, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 2-1 to United. I think
Which United?
Rash. Sorry, Man United. And I'm gonna say Rashford and no, Bruno Fernandes score. And for West Ham, ooh, I think I think it'll be a header from Diop, which is a bit random. But I don't know. Score predictions always have to be random. Anyways,
Those are all the games we have. The top 3 games are going to be we're talking about in today's episode. Moving on, let's get right into the next segment of today's podcast, which is talking about the relegation battle. 3 teams every year get relegated, sent down to the second division of English football, the Championship. This season, it's not looking. I think there are 3 clear candidates, but we never know in the Premier League. There's the magic of the Prem. Anything can happen really. Some teams can pull off great escapes like Leicester did in the season before they went on to ultimately win the league. I think some great teams will have to go down. Some teams with a lot of history will definitely be seeing their way back to the championship again. Um, so we both picked out three teams who we think could potentially go down to the championship this season. Who do you think those three teams will be?
So you can see the bottom half of the table on your screen right now. I obviously we have to pick three teams because three teams are the ones that get relegated. But I have four teams, and from those four, I'm gonna obviously pick three. So on the bottom half of the table, I think there's sort of like a division. There's the 20th place, the 19th, the 18th, and then the 17th, those four positions. And then there's the 16th. So I think the 16th place, who's Brighton right now, are sort of safe. I think they're in a safe zone. So I think it's between Fulham, West Brom, Burnley, and Sheffield, who are currently all the bottom four right now. Because every other team has shown, has played well and stuff. But I think Burnley have won, West Brom have won, Fulham have won, Sheffield haven't. But still, I don't. I think even though um Fulham and Brighton are only like one spot apart, I think there's just a much bigger difference. It's further than it seems. There's a much bigger difference between Brighton and Fulham. That's why I have these four teams. So from I actually I even though Sheffield United are last and by a margin they've only got 1 point this entire season. I still feel that they're gonna turn it around. I don't know why, but now looking, I thought they played well against Liverpool, and then I saw them a couple of other games and they looked okay. But after what 9 10 matches, they've just drawn one. So I have to say Sheffield United are gonna be one of the teams to get relegated, and I'm gonna say West Brom and Fulham. I think Burnley will get themselves out of this. They'll get a 17th. I think there'll definitely be a tight relegation battle. Uh, but I'm gonna say West Brom and Fulham will fall behind Burnley, and Burnley will just about escape it. I don't know why I'm saying that. I don't know. I just feel Burnley have a stronger team in defense, midfield, and attack than Fulham and West Brom. Though I'm saying this, and Fulham just beat Leicester last week, which proves that they're still a Premier League side. They have that in them to beat those big teams, but the inconsistency is just it's too much. They just lose too many games to stay up. So those are my three teams: Sheffield, no, sorry, not Burnley, West Brom, and Fulham.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I think you've picked out some some pretty good candidates for relegation. I'm gonna partially agree with you there. I also think Sheffield will go down. At the start of the season, I recorded a video with Footy Fluent where I also predicted that Sheffield would go down. I said the 18th position, but they really look like they could finish rock bottom. They've played utterly shambolic this season, to put it into words, because the way they've been playing is not the Sheffield United of last season. They've made some good signings, signed some, some championship prospects. Jaden Bogle from Derby County, Ian Brewster from Liverpool, Sander Burge is someone who signed with them halfway through last season. They signed some good players, and I think while they do have the quality in the team and they've also got the management, I don't know what is going wrong with them. I just don't see them capable of winning any games right now. They lost to West Brom, which is a team I don't think any team right now should be losing to, because West Brom are arguably the worst team in the league, and Sheffield lost that game to them. They've lost all the games they've played against the other relegation candidates, and they sit with only 1 point after 10 games played, which is one of the worst records we've seen in a long time. And it's definitely something which is going to affect their mentality, because you don't have the confidence to fight back after 1 point taken from 10 games. How are you going to get the confidence to fight your way out of this position? And I don't really see anything happening for them. So the other team is I've gone for is, like you said, West Brom. I just mentioned they're probably the worst team in the league. I don't rate West Brom at all. I think they've got one or two good players: Matthews Pereira, Callum Robinson. I think maybe Ivanovic is a good, but he's playing as a right centre back in a back five, and he's pretty old now. so he's not good enough to keep them up on his own. So I'm going to say they're going down 19th position, going to go down with a pretty bad record, and some memories to forget. And for the last relegation position, I'm actually going to go for Burnley. I think Burnley have been in the league far too long now, but you always expect Burnley to stay up, right? I don't think they have the quality or the players in their side this season to stay up. They didn't make hardly made any acquisitions over the summer when they have good management. While his style of play is a bit unorthodox, Sean Dyche is a good manager. He does the job he needs to do. He plays a very defensive brand of football. I think he does the job he needs to do. They've got Dwight McNeil, a promising English winger. I think he's probably their biggest creative outlet, grabbing quite a few assists last season. But I think Burnley are going down to the championship after the long wait from all the Premier League fans. I think this season they've been much worse than they were last season. I remember they were involved in a 6-goal game against Leicester earlier on in the season, and they drew 0-0 with West Brom, lost 3-1 to Newcastle, 1-0 lost to Tottenham, 3-0 against Chelsea. They did beat Palace 1-0, but yeah, I don't see them doing much damage to anyone this season, and that's why I've said they're going to go down. I've said Fulham are going to stay up, which I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with me here. But Fulham have got some really bright young talents, but they are lacking some experience in that squad. I think a player, I think Lukman, Mitrovic, and Cavallero is a seriously underrated front three. While they might not be the best at penalties, I think that they're pretty good. That's a pretty promising front three, and if you can keep feeding Mitrovic the chances, I think he will put them away. They started off the season pretty badly, but I think Scott Barker, again, not the best manager in the world, but I think he will get a job done and keep them alive just ahead of the out of the relegation zone, pulling off an Aston Villa just like they did last season, sealing their place in the Premier League on the last day of the season. I think it's going to be a situation like that for Fulham. So I've gone for Fulham to stay up in 17th position, and that actually concludes our relegation battle overview for this Premier League season. So moving ahead, let's get right on to our next segment, the final segment of today's video. Who each Big Six team, the traditional Big Six, Tottenham, Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Chelsea, who they need to, if any, who do they need to sign in the summer transfer window, the January winter transfer window to, improve their squad. And let's get started off with the club. Who you expected to be ruined by the injuries they faced this season, but they have stood strong in the face of adversity. It is Liverpool Football Club. I think there's one obvious position which they need to bolster, but let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Who do you think they need to sign this window?
Oh, well, firstly, you're right. They have got injuries. They've got a ton of injuries, the most in the Premier League. And they've been on top of their Champions League group. They've already qualified and they're tied on top of the league. So we have to choose we have to at least choose somebody that who we think the club needs to sign. Um ob- I obviously I have to play center. I have to say center back because we've been playing Matip, who's no offense, but he's a bit unreliable because he keeps getting injured. Though when he does play, he's good. And Fabinho, who's a makeshift center back, he's actually a midfielder, which is a position we really need some like backups right now. You need players. And then we've been playing Reese Williams, who's like an academy boy. He's so young. And then Nat Phillips, he's been absent for a long time. He's just been there. So, uh, oof. I'm gonna have to say centre back because Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk are out for the season, and I think those players are the kind of players you need to compete in the Champions League. You need those players to play against teams who you face in the quarterfinals, semi-finals, and potentially finals of the Champions League. That's when you need your best players, and I think Fabinho has to also play in midfield. And I think because of the fixture list, we just can't keep playing Matip, Fabinho, and then sometimes playing Nat Phillips and Reece Williams. It just doesn't work. So I think I'm gonna say a centre back, and I'm not gonna say Upamecano because Upamecano would be super expensive in the Jan window, but when his contract runs out in the summer, he's only 36 mil. So I I'm gonna say I'm gonna say Per Schurz from Ajax, who played against Liverpool recently. I thought he played really well, especially in the first half. He's already said, I want to stay at Ajax, but when everybody says that, when people ask them about transfers, Liverpool have already made a 27 million bid for him. He's not overly expensive. He's 21, which means he's very much worth it. And I think he's a good enough centre back to play against Liverpool. I mean, in both the legs of the Champions League, he conceded one goal in each game against Salah, Mane, Jota, which is impressive. And for like 20 minutes in each game, Ajax literally had like two defenders back, and I don't. He was controlling the game quite well from the back while Ajax had the ball. So I thought post show, or however you pronounce it, post scores was good, and I think he's the player Liverpool need to sign this January window. 27 million. We'll see if this happens or not. Who do you think Liverpool need to sign?
I think Liverpool's defense right now is lacking two things. The centre backs, there's two attributes which they're lacking. One is experience, the other one is pace. I think they've got right now Matip, who's very injury prone, a bit unreliable in that position. They've got Fabinho, who's a makeshift centre back at the moment. I think he's been outstanding there so far, at least. A great player for the Reds. Someone who can defensive midfielder who can play centre back, and when he does, he's world class there. I think that they're lacking pace and experience in that position. I think a player who's been linked with them is David Alaba. I don't really rate Alaba. I think you can ask Bayern fans; they would say to you that he is not a good acquisition to make. But I think that there's quite a few options they could actually go for here. Um, I think they've got, they can sign Upamecano. He has a cheap release clause, but like a 36 mil release clause actually. I think that Alaba, as I mentioned, as shows as S mentioned just now, I think that mm, this is actually pretty. It's a good list. I think that I'm gonna go for Pershers. Pershers is a. I saw him play again both legs against Ajax, and while he does lack experience, I think I think this is a season where while this experience is a big issue, big part always. I think this season, particular, it's you need to gamble on players more. You can't really choose your assets. I think a player like Pochers, who twice in that game he kept up with money. Young players are actually the way to go. I would say for this season at least. And as a short-term addition to the club, Pochers would be absolutely great. He's a fast, reliable centre back. He was Delit's understudy while the in the 18-19 Champions League run. He's a player I've always rated. I signed him on FIFA career modes. I know that's not much, but I think Shaw's is a great player, and Liverpool should definitely go for him. But that will take us right on to our next team, which is actually Chelsea. I think Chelsea have actually signed enough players in this window. I don't think they really need to sign anyone else. So I'm gonna say they should just conserve their money. Next the summer window, they could sign a big player, like a really big player. Replace one of their potentially one of their defenders. Maybe sign a world class goalkeeper. While Edward Mendy, actually they have a really good squad at the moment. I don't see anywhere where they need to bolster their squad. What about you?
Again, even they've spent so much over the summer. They spent like 250 million and they bought seven players. If when you buy seven players and you spend so much money like that, you have to think that they've sorted out their problems. They sorted out their goalkeeper problems, their left back problems, their midfield problems, and their attacking problems. So, and as well, they got Thiago Silva as well. So I don't think they really need anyone. If I had to choose one, I would say Dennis Zakaria, because I feel no. I'll say Bissouma from Brighton, because he he feels like a bit of a mini Kante. Obviously, I think Kante is obviously much better, but he's getting older. Jorginho is also not young. So I think I don't. If they had to sign a player, I would say Bissouma, but I really just don't think they need to sign a player. Obviously, every team can improve like that, but they've bolstered their team enough. So I'm gonna say no one for Chelsea. If anyone, Bissouma, but otherwise no. I don't think they need to sign anyone, and it'd be really unfair if they do. Anyways, that takes us on to our next team, which is Arsenal, and I think there'll be a lot of debate about this because many of their signings have been a bit of a miss. I'm going to start off with Arsenal. I think reflecting on their previous transfers, I think Pepe for 72 million, he's been a big flop. He's been playing okay recently, but he's not worth 72 million. I'm sorry, he's just not. Um, I think Magalhaes has been he's been a good signing. 27 million, a young player. He's been good. They definitely had to improve their defense, and he has. And I think they signed Willian also this season. I think it's one of those. It's like when they signed David Luiz from Chelsea. I think they just bought him because he was cheap and he was an option. I don't know how much they bought Willian for. Maybe for free, but again, he's just old and he's like okay now. So I stuff because they seem overloaded with mediocre players in so many positions. Again, no offense. Oh, oof. This is a really tough one. Why don't you say who you think they need to sign, and while you're talking, I'll think of a position they need to improve in.
I think I mentioned earlier that they're really lacking in creativity. I think a creative midfielder, and the one I'm thinking about is an attacking midfielder from RB Salzburg. It's Dominic Szoboszlai. I think he's a good player. I think he's been heavily linked with Arsenal as well, linked with Arsenal and AC Milan. He's been great in the Champions League, in the Austrian league as well. Primarily an attacking midfielder. I think he might have to switch up the formation, but he could definitely be incorporated in any formation. He's a superb player, and he will create those chances that Arsenal are missing right now. Those key passes, those chances that are they not creating at the moment. They have some good finishers. I mean, some mediocre finishers, some lethal strikers, and some people who are good on their day. So I think that a player like him is definitely what they need at this very moment. A creative midfielder, a good cheap alternative who will be there for the long term is Solazabai. So I'm going to go for him as the Arsenal signing. And this window is also heavily linked with them, which is makes the transfer that much more realistic. But yeah, back to you.
Obviously, we can't say players of our wildest teams. We have to think of a realistic transfer that Arsenal could get. And I think I agree. So Bosley would be good, but I've thought of, and I'm going to say Rafael Guerrero because he'll fit in Arsenal's 3-4-3 system well. He's a left back that loves to go forward. Again, not the youngest, but I feel if they targeted Guerrero, they might get him. He seems happy at Dortmund, happy playing in the Champions League, but again, he's not ungettable. They could get him. He's 26, which is a little bit old, but it'll decrease his price, and that means they'll have him at his best for another good 4 years. I feel Maitland Niles is a righty playing at that left wing back position, and then Saka plays sometimes, but they don't really have a set player at that position. And I think Guerrero would be good. So for Arsenal, I'm gonna say Guerrero. So our next team, so
Man City, uh, the blue side of Manchester, a team which has recently come to light as one of the bigger teams in the league. A takeover, and they spent a lot of money on their defense, especially. I think they finally got a sort of reliable defensive partnership. Ruben Diaz from Benfica and Laporte, who signed from Bilbao a couple of years ago. I think that's a good defensive partnership, and I think the player that they don't need to sign a player in this window. I think something they need to sign is consistency and clinical finishing, because City create the chances. They've got some of the best, most creative players in the world: Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva. They've got Raheem Sterling, who, while he does get a lot of hate, he converts so many chances, he scores so many goals every season, puts up outstanding numbers, and he's right now, I think, the most or second most expensive player in the in the world right now. Raz, he's a good player. He obviously an ex-Liverpool player. They've got Sergio Aguero, who's on his day the best, if one of not one of the best strikers in the world. Clinical player, proved himself over the years. Riyad Mahrez, who came from Leicester. I think that they've got a good enough squad, and while undoubtedly they will be spending more money like they always do, they're always trying to improve, and you have to commend the owners for that. Putting so much of their money and their paying attention to what the club need. I think that's really, while you can always call them a oil money club and you can slander them, owners who love the club so much and are willing to put in that much money and to trust a guy who, even though he hasn't delivered that one trophy they won yet, I think it's outstanding really. So I'm gonna say that City don't need anyone. They just need to get consistent, get their shooting boots on and get to work.
Uh, yeah, again, I feel City's owners have the power. I think they have more power to sign whichever player they want than any other team in the league. Uh, Again, I don't. Their team looks sorted now. I think they have a pretty strong squad. They have enough players to sustain them for Premier League and Champions League. But if I had to say one player, because that's kind of the whole point of the discussion, I would say a backup striker. I'd say Marcus Thuram, because as Aguero's a bit old, and then Gabriel Jesus and Aguero, still two strikers, but some Aguero's old now, struggling to stay fit. And I feel it'll be good to have someone like Marcus Thuram around. But I feel like City are not in desperate need of anybody yet. So I'm not like completely saying like they have to sign him. But if they had to sign anyone, I would say him. Yeah, just because I feel maybe they need another backup striker, but like they already have two, because well, yeah, they have a strong squad with good enough players. So yeah, I feel City don't need to sign anyone. Our next team will be Tottenham. Uh, I'm gonna start off with this one. I would like to say, like, they signed Matt Doherty, who was really good for Wolves over the summer, to replace, to get a better right back. But I feel that's backfired on them. He's not been very good. Obviously, he's only been here for a couple of weeks, but he's 27 and he doesn't really fit into their system. Uh, this might be a bit random, but maybe they signed a player from the UK, so it's easier to, or whatever, Ireland, so it's easier to communicate with the rest of the English players. But if I was in Tottenham's position, I would have signed Mukiele from Leipzig last summer, because he's fast. He can play as a right back or a centre back, and I think he would fit well. Obviously, Lloris, Sissoko, Ndombele is French. Um, they could communicate, which is a bit random, but still, I would say that's something they could have done. And for the other part of the transfer window, I feel they signed players that they need, like Bale and Carlos Vinicius, to back up Harry Kane. But right now, in the January transfer window, I would say they need to sign a centre back, and I'm going to say another Leipzig player, and I'm going to say Konate, because again, he's French. He can communicate with Lloris well, as well as Aurier and Sissoko and Ndombele. And they've been lacking a centre back, because Alderweireld and Dyer have been good, but then again, you can't play Europa League and Premier League with only two centre backs. And then they had to play Rodin, who was okay against Chelsea. But I think they need another centre back. I think they need a young centre back who they can have for a decent amount of time. And I think Konate will be good, because he's been playing well for Leipzig, a Champions League level player. But again, these are not realistic transfers. Like, we're not saying them based on who the club is linked to. But if obviously I'm not going to say Spurs need to sign Messi because that's just unrealistic, but if they had to sign a player, I would say Konate because they need a young centre back right now. Or who would you say for Spurs?
I think I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. I think that at centre back, they've got enough cover. I think Jafet Tanganga, who is primarily a fullback, is a good makeshift centre back. I think Rodon, I think Alderweireld, Dyer, who's been really good there. They've also got some other players who can play centre back. They've got some players in the youth system who can play centre back. I think they have enough centre backs, at least at the moment. They could definitely do with, I think, some a right back. I'm gonna have to agree with you there. I think a right back could be very good for Spurs. They signed a wing back, a right wing back this season in Doherty. He plays really well in a back five, but in a back four he struggles to play. He struggles to do a job. And again, a covering centre back. Doherty plays right centre back for Ireland for his country. So I think there again another centre back, more cover for the centre back position. As a fullback, I think a primary fullback, I would have gone with actually Nelson Semedo, who funnily enough, went to Wolves. Why instead as Doherty's replacement? So I'm going to say that I'm actually going to say they should go for a championship fullback. I think teams like Villa and Sheffield have gone and got themselves Jaden Bogle, Matty Cash. I think they lost Kyle Walker Peters, who is an absolutely brilliant player. He's been so good for Southampton this season, and letting him go was probably one of the dumbest things Mourinho has done in his time at Spurs. And a right back, a I think what they need right now is a world class right back. I would have I'm gonna say again, save up your money. I think a player they will get to bolster this position. They could get is an ex Chelsea academy graduate. It's Tariq Lamptey, currently at Brighton. He's been linked with Bayern. Everyone loves Lamptey. Lamptey is just one of those players, loved by all, hated by none. And while I would say it's pretty realistic transfer because you see all these London academy graduates go to the other, the clubs, rival clubs in the country. Declan Rice, moved to West Ham, even though he came through the Chelsea system, and now Chelsea want him back, and they're going to get him back for 80 million if they do. So I'm going to say that Tariq Lamptey would be a good signing. I don't think they'll get him in this window though, so I'm going to say that they're going to get no one in this window but Tariq Lamptey in the summer.
Oh, who's the next team? United.
The next team who we think could bolster some positions. I think they have a lot of positions they need to bolster right now, at least. I think they missed out on Jadon Sancho in the summer. A big loss, but maybe not that big of a loss because he hasn't performed as well as he normally does this season. So maybe United actually dodged the bullet there. But that's not United dodging bullet with failed transfers is not something we see very often. But I think I'm gonna go for a centre back. I think they need centre back cover. I'm gonna go with Dayot Upamecano. Again, he has a 36 mil release clause, and I think they very well should and could activate this release clause in January, especially if Leipzig go to the Europa League, because there's a really big match coming up at the end of this or at the end of next, like the start of next week. It's United take on RB Leipzig in the battle for that for the positions in the Champions League qualifying rounds. PSG traveled or play as in sorry they will welcome Istanbul Başakşehir to the Parc des Princes. Neymar, Mbappe, some really good players. They proved themselves again. I think Mbappe has not been the same since that Champions League final. He was absolutely horrendous against United yesterday, and he's just not been the same player he normally is. But he's such a good player. I think that he will get back to his form soon enough. And I'm gonna actually go for Upamecano. I think he's a good, reliable young centre back. I think they're lacking. They need to, gamble for the centre back position, the centre back backup. Unlike teams like Liverpool who need experience and pace, they need to get someone good. I think Upamecano would be the guy they need. So yeah, moving on. Who do you think? Let's just get through this quickly because I think we've almost elapsed our time limit for today's episode.
uh, I'm going to say Upamecano again because their centre backs are just rubbish. But obviously, I don't want Upamecano to go to them. But he's young, he's good, He's cheap as well, so he'd be a good signing. He'd be a valuable signing to any team. But I feel even in terms of players they have to get rid of, there are just so many of these guys who they could sell and then just get better people from, like the mid. Like, what are they doing with keeping Juan Mata? Like they have Van der Beek, they have Bruno Fernandes. Like, what is the use of him? They have a lot of junk lying around. But anyways, I'm not here to be biased. I think they need to, if they had to sign a player, I would say they should sign Upamecano, but I don't want them to. But if they had to sign someone, they should sign him. But that's it for today's episode. I'm not gonna do the outro because I just don't want to.
Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. It was a more informal episode than normal, but yeah, we really hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you next week on Tuesday or on Wednesday or Tuesday actually for our Champions League preview. But that's all. SNT out.